What's up everyone, and welcome back to the Comps channel where we're passionate about everything RF. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this by soldering all the components together. So hang around and we'll get to soldering.
Here, 4 miles west of Cambridge Airport.
Okay, I'll be back in 6 seconds.
We're approaching a restricted area. Restricted area is 1 mile west.
Now before we get into it, if you're enjoying these videos and find them useful, definitely give me a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe if you haven't. Alright, so here is the PCB board. In the PCB board you'll notice there'll be two of these spacers here. We'll need to save those for later, but go ahead and take your PCB board out. Get these spacers out. Let me just put those back in the bag for now. Alright, well, I guess before we get started, as far as things you'll need, you'll obviously need a soldering iron, and you most definitely need a helping hand. Now, you can find ones like this one fairly cheap, and at a minimum, you definitely at least need this. I really love this one from Sane Smart that I got off of Amazon, if that video would stay focused. And it comes with its metal board, and it comes with these magnetic arms you can stick wherever you want. Really helpful. This thing is stuck on there. What I really like about it are these magnetic pieces here. What you can do with these is set them roughly where you need it, and then move them around and get your board set right down on it like this. Super easy to work on, easy to lift up and flip over to work on the other side. So I really like that. So let's get to soldering the first piece. What we're going to do is probably work the edges here first, and then probably go by components like transistors, resistors, and capacitors and all that. We'll group all those together. It's pretty straightforward. You can see on the board itself. Let me zoom into the board here. That's the wrong way. So on the board itself, you can see the different components that are labeled. So this is a 10K resistor, 220 resistor, 100K resistor, and so on. So that part's pretty straightforward. You just need to find the specific component where it goes. Now, you will run into some cases where the component on the board does not match the label on the bag of the component you purchased. So if you run into that, I will show you how to convert. So we'll start with this little switcher button, whatever you want to call it, which goes in there. Alright, so obviously put it through the hole, then we need to solder on the other side. So alright, so the temperature I have my soldering station set to is 785 here. So one thing I also like to do, I set my solder roll on the one of the helping hands there. So you will also need some flux and a brush for it. you may find that the brush isn't picking anything up, so you can go ahead and melt a little bit of it. There you go. So I'll put the flux there. Don't know how well that's showing up on camera, but that one looks good. Actually, let's get some more light. So what I'm doing here, I'm putting the iron on the other side, on one side, and then coming in from the other side with the solder, just to make sure everything's heated up nicely. This stuff don't want to melt today. Which of course it would do that now that I'm doing a video. Clean this tip up a little bit. Okay. So that one looks good. Okay, got a Q-tip, so let's heat this back up a little bit and clean it up some. Q-tip might not be the best. I'll grab another brush and see if that works better. So you can see it better. That brush worked a little bit better, but as you can see, it's a decent solder there. Alright, now we're ready to solder on the next piece, which will be this audio jack here, which will fit right there. Now, one thing with this one, the pins, or whatever you want to call it, aren't quite as long as a lot of the other things. Cut a piece of tape here. we can get that to stay on while we solder. Okay. So for this, basically just need to get the solder to stick for one. There we go. That one looks good. Come on. These two transistors here we'll do next. So here's one of them here. Now you do have to put them a certain way. But if you look at the shape on the board here and the shape of the transistor, you'll see there's a flat side. So just match up the flat side with what you see here. So just push one down. Alright, don't push too far down because you'll break it. But alright, so once you got that, so another thing you need is a pair of flush cutters here like I got. And I will leave a link in the description for these as well. But basically, I just want to go in and cut these. There we go. So those three are cut. Probably do that a little bit better. Alright, so there's that one. Okay, so here are the diodes. And just like the transistors, the diodes are also not labeled. So you got 1, 2, 3 there. Now, if you look at the diodes here, let me grab one of them out of here. You'll notice they have a black line on the diode. I don't know how well that's shown up on the camera, but you'll notice a black line on the diode. Now, if you look on the board here, you'll see a line. You just need to match that black line in the same direction as you see on the board here. So for this one goes on this way. So we'll start with this one here. So what I like to do, I will put my finger there and then bend it back, flip it around, do the same thing, let's bend it back. Then push it down in there, make sure the line is of course matching. there it is, seated in there. Now these will not hold themselves up like some of these other things will. So what I do is I'll fold them over to make itself hold itself up there. And same deal, go in with your, let's get that little piece of solder off there. Go in with your flush cutters and cut the excess pieces off there. 30k ohm resistors here that we will do next. So you'll see in the package we got 2 of those. And if you look on the board, you'll see there's 30k. So here's one here. Now these does not matter how you put these, they could go either way. Now as far as reading them, I believe the light colored side is usually on the right. So what I've been doing is just making sure that that light colored ring is on the right side, but again, it doesn't really matter. So just like what we did with the diodes, just fold them over, find the spot, and again these were 30k, so I'll set that down in there. Now a lot of times they'll be too long to fit in there flat. So as you can see, it's sort of sticking up, which is fine, it won't hurt anything. And again, grab your flush cutters. I like to grab and cut so they don't go flying everywhere. So the other component will have our capacitors. And you can see here these are 1 UF. You can see there. So what you want to do is look on the board for 1 UF, and here is, it's just off camera, let me move it over. So you can see here we got a 1 UF right here. So, and these also do not matter how they go in. So highly doubt it'll show up on camera, but there's a value printed on it. And I will usually just put it with the value facing me, but again, does not matter. So these will not stay put on their own. So I will also bend these just slightly to hold them in place. So this one's a prime example. It looks like it's soldered on, but when I jiggle it, you can see it moving, which let's see if I can get that to show up on camera. See how it's moving there? So from looking above, it looks like it's a solid connection, but if you jiggle it, you'll notice movement. The other side, I believe, is fine. Yeah. you'll notice there's no movement on the capacitor on the other side. But on this one, you can see it moving around. So that is not a solid connection, obviously. So we will hit that one again. Now, let's see. That side's fine. That side is fine. We can go ahead and cut these off. So you likely, these are not required, but they're handy. You likely have these chip holders, I don't know what you'd really call them. You see on the board we got this bigger one here, and then there is a smaller one there. So what you do is basically solder this on the board. Now if you look, one side has a notch on it. On the left side here there's a notch. Now if you look at on the print there, you'll see that same notch on there, so make sure that matches. So get that on there. Now this is sort of a similar situation where it will not stay on, and you may want to tape that on. You could also lay the board down, which I may do that. That would be too hard to see it on camera without messing with it, so I will tape this on actually. So let's get that and view the camera. I apologize on the camera shaking. It's on the camera tripod's on the same table, so anything I do on the table makes the camera shake. But I'll try to limit that as much as I can. Alright, so there's tape. Just get that taped into place. There you go, so that looks good. All the contacts look good on that. So once you've done that, we can peel the tape off it, like so. Alright, so here we have the bigger one, and same deal. Look for the notch on one side there, and just match it up with what you see on the board. So lay that in there, and just like the smaller one, it will not stay into place, so we will put tape over this one as well to hold it in there. With that taped in place, we can go ahead and solder that on now. Looks pretty good. Remove the tape off of it. So that one is good to go now. So that covers just about all the components other than the big Nucleo board here and the LEDs. I will do the LEDs, well, I'll do the Nucleo board and the LEDs last. But for now, we've already covered the major components like the, we got the switch, the audio jack, the 2 transistors, the diodes, the resistors, and the capacitors. So I've showed you everything you need to know regarding that. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there will be some situations that you will run into where the label on the board does not match the label that you received, or the label on the bag for the component. So I'm going to go ahead and solder the rest of this stuff on, and when I run into one of those situations where you have to do a conversion, I will show you how to go about that. Okay, just ran into the first situation I want to point out. It's a very easy situation, but I do want to point it out just in case you run into that. So here you'll see we need a 2K2 resistor is what it's labeled there as. So what that actually is, it's going to be a 2.2K ohm resistor is what goes there. So it doesn't exactly match what's on the board, but it is 2.2K resistor is what that is. So there will be one other one that you'll run into. That's going to be this 6K8 resistor, which is a 6.8K. So the 6.8K is going to be 6K8. Alright, also ran into the first conversion situation here. So when you go to grab your next part, in my case here, I grabbed 0.01 UF. But if you look throughout the board here, there is no 0.01 UF on here. So that means it's going to be one of these other values. So you'll want to convert the UF and figure out which one of these you need. So to do that, there's this website from Rework that I will include in the video description that will allow you to enter in the 0.01 UF or whatever value you need to convert, and then you can find which value is printed on the board that you need. So after converting that, one of the conversions from the 0.01 NF was 10 NF, and you'll notice we have a 10 NF right there. So that's where that one's gonna go. So that's the process of doing that conversion there. Alright, so here we have just about all the components soldered on except for the LEDs and the Nucleo board. Now we can go ahead and put our chips in the slot there. Now you may remember the notch from earlier. If you look at the chip itself, there will also be a notch on it. So you just want to make sure that matches up. These you'll sometimes have to bend them a little bit to get them to fit in there. Alright, so there's that one. Then we got the bigger EEPROM, or I think the smaller one's the EEPROM. But this will also have a notch on it. Make sure you line it up correctly. Now we can move on to the Nucleo board. Now before we put this Nucleo board on here, you may remember the spacers that were in the bag along with the PCB board. What these are for, if you're planning on using a case with this lifts the Nucleo board up high enough to where it'll fit properly in the case. Line those up on each end like so. Then on the Nucleo board, the USB side will face that way. And you'll notice one side has these plastic parts on the bottom. That is the bottom. Make sure it goes down that way. So just fit that in there like so. Sort of push down on it until it's right snug on the spacers there. One thing you may notice is the holes for the Nucleo board are staggered, so you can likely get away without having to solder this. I recommend soldering it, but maybe you want to use this on another project or something, you do have it is a possibility to not solder that, but I still recommend doing it, especially if you're going to have this out and about. For now I'm not soldering this, and we will move on to the LEDs, and that'll be the final part there. Now for the LEDs, those do matter how you place them. Now if you look at this LED here, you'll notice one side is longer than the other. Now I don't know if it's showing up on, it should be. If you look on the board where the LEDs go, you'll notice this little notch with two lines on it. That is where the longer side of the LED will go. So also towards the end of the LED there, you'll notice there's two little, I don't know what you'd really call them, but you'll notice there's two things towards the end. What I do, I'll slide it down until it reaches that point, and then bend the LED over. Then you can go ahead and solder that on. So we'll go ahead and do that for the rest of them here. There we go. So with the LEDs soldered on and Nucleo boards on, you're all done. The next thing to do will be to flash the firmware on the Nucleo board here. Now this video is already long enough, so that is going to be on the next video. So again, thank you for watching. If this video was helpful, definitely give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do so and hit that notification bell to be alerted when the next video comes out. Thank you all and have a good one.